I'm Stormy with StouderHouse. I don't sell bread on my website, but I get a lot of questions about it because people know that I make bread. So I thought I'd just make a little video and show you how I do it. The idea of bread is very, very simple. It's all in the technique. That's what makes it hard. Same thing with soap, by the way. To make a loaf of bread, you need 3 cups of flour, a cup of liquid, a little salt, package of dry active yeast. Everything else that you add is just making it fancy. So if you can master that, you can make bread. I'm gonna make a double batch here because, well, normally I make 4, but I'm gonna make 2 for the sake of simplicity here. But what you wanna do is start with a good saucepan, heavy on the bottom. You don't want a thin one. And put in your 2 cups of liquid. I like to use buttermilk. You can use milk, you can use water, you can use any combination of the 2. I like to put in a couple of eggs. I'm putting in a nice big double yolk duck egg on that one. I put in about a teaspoon of salt, and I like to put in a little splash of white vinegar. And then on the oils, you can use butter. I like to use oil. I'm going to use about 1/4 cup of sunflower oil because it has a high heat, and I prefer using the high heat oils when baking. And I know what some of you are thinking, why is she measuring liquid oil in a dry ingredient thing? It's because I don't like to do the dishes. So if you measure your oil in a 1/4 cup deal and you dump it out, then you measure your honey in the same one, then you don't have any trouble getting the honey out. I'm gonna put a little extra. And it's 1 less dish to wash. Honey comes right out because of the oil. Okay, I'm gonna take this and put it on the stove and heat it up for a couple of minutes. You wanna keep a close eye on it. You do not want it to get too hot, because if you let it get too hot, it's gonna kill your yeast. So you just wanna get it like baby's bathwater temperature. I have heated up the liquid and it's warm enough that I stick my finger in, but it doesn't burn me. Now I want to add the fun stuff. For 1 package of dry active yeast is 2½ teaspoons, so I'm making 2 loaves. For every loaf you make, you need a packet. And I buy the yeast in bulk and then put it in a mason jar in the fridge to store it. So I'm gonna need 5 teaspoons of yeast in mine. So let me just measure that out right quick. And if you did get your liquid too hot, you need to wait till it cools down before you add that, because if you add that to hot liquid, it's gonna kill it right away and your bread will not rise. You will have a big mess. Now you can add lots of fun stuff. I'm gonna add some wheat germ. You can add flaxseed, chia seeds, nuts, whatever you wanna put in. I usually add about 1/4 cup of any of that sort of thing that I want to make it interesting. And then I always add oatmeal, but I usually add at least a cup of that. So those amounts of these other dry ingredients are gonna detract from the total amount of flour you need. For 2 loaves, you need 6 cups of flour. So I've just added a cup of oatmeal and 1/4 cup of the wheat germ, so that's gonna detract a little bit from the flour I need. But I'm gonna subtract that amount from the white flour. For wheat, I would do 1/3 to 2/3 wheat to white. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in 2 cups of wheat flour, whole wheat flour. You don't want to use all whole wheat flour. It makes the bread it's just too heavy. Stir that in, get that all mixed up. Notice I'm still in the same pot, again with the not liking to make unnecessary dirty dishes. And now I'm gonna put in some of the all-purpose flour, and I just work this in bit by bit. The trick in bread is just knowing what it's supposed to look like and when you're supposed to do the next thing. So you know about the temperature, and see it's starting to get kind of gooey. You see that? Oops, That's okay, we're about to use that countertop. No worries. My pan's not hot anymore, so let me take my towel out. And I just do it in the pan to get it as much not gooey as I can before I dump it out. I'm gonna go about another half cup, and then I'm gonna start adding them down here. Okay, I'm gonna set aside part of that one because I don't know if we're actually gonna use it or not. You can always add a little more at a time. I'm not particularly precise about this part. I just add it till it feels right. But the rule of thumb is 3 cups of flour to 1 cup of liquid for each loaf that you're going to make. And as usual, I, about this stage, think, boy, I should have removed my ring, because it does get dirty. And I usually do forget. So those of you who are smarter than I am, take off your jewelry. Also, I know there are some people who would never do this on granite. They would only do it on marble or some other solid surface because granite is porous. And yes, there is validity to that. However, I would say your bigger danger lies in not having clean hands. So scrub your fingernails before you make bread, because everything on you is going to get stuck in this bread. Okay, this is where we go from shaggy to smooth. This is a shaggy dough, what I call a shaggy dough. And I'm just trying to keep all the little shaggy pieces together and work in some of this flour until it starts to hold its form. It's still absorbing flour very quickly, so I'm going to put out a little more. And this is where you get your exercise. Now it's starting to be a little less shaggy, starting to hold its form a little more, so I can change over to the more traditional kneading movement. I'm going to get some of this off my hands at this point. Quarter turns and a fold over. Just turning it a quarter and folding it over. And it's really starting to bind together now. I'm not left-handed. I can do it, but I have to go a lot slower. But it gives your arm a chance to rest. And I'm starting to stick a little bit, so I'm scooting the flour around underneath to keep it from sticking. Anything flies off, just shove it back in. And yes, you have to do this for a good bit. I hear people say, oh, you gotta need 10 minutes. Okay, y'all are gonna like it better if I use a measuring cup, so I'm gonna do so, but I would just grab a handful normally and throw it out there. I don't really time how long I do it. I just do it until the dough feels right. And you'll know, once you've done it a few times, you sort of get a handle on how it should feel. Now it's really binding together and becoming dense and harder to manipulate. Also, all this time, I have had the oven shelves adjusted to where I need them. And I don't have the oven on, but I have the oven light on to warm up the oven a little bit. I'm gonna put the bread dough right into the pans to rise, rather than letting it rise in a bowl until it's doubled in size and then punching it down. Okay, here we go. We have reached the breaking point. You You want to do this until it feels like a baby's bottom. That's the test. See how smooth that is? That is a well done loaf of dough. So now I'm going to divide it in half because I'm making 2 loaves. You can use a pastry knife if you want, but then you have to wash it. I'm going to knead it just a little more. Okay, kind of shape it, get rid of seams on the bottom side and so forth. I'm going to take a little of that sunflower oil. I'm going to put some in the pan. I don't want to put too much because it causes the crust to just sort of fry. It's like putting scrambled eggs in a skillet that's too hot. You just sort of, it's not as good. I'm going to take the pretty side, put it pretty side down, kind of it around, and then flip it over. And now that my hands are greasy on that side, I'm going to tuck around the edges and make sure I got everything, and then kind of run my oily fingers around the edges so it doesn't stick as it rises. And if you've got a bunch of oil puddling up in the corners, that's too much. Pour some of it off. Then you want to pop these in the oven that you've had the light on in. And let them rise until they're just coming over the top of the pan. Then crank the oven up to temperature. Let them bake. The trick is you won't know how long, but you can smell it. To me, the bread is done when you start smelling ever so faintly a burning smell. That's when you want to take them out. Put them on a rack, get them out of the pans, let them cool. Do not try to cut a loaf of bread while it's still really hot. Let it stand for 10 or 15 minutes before you slice it. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of fall apart. Anyway, hope this helps. Practice, practice, practice. Thanks for watching.